buy, sell, David Roach, either top 3 or DNF.
Yeah, I buy that. I certainly feel like, that'd be the odds on favorite if you were, jumping on DraftKings or some other, MGM gambling website. Yeah, I mean, all the content, all the words coming out of his mouth, he's going to compete at the front of this race. And I think that just exposes him to, either knocking it out of the park like he's done in his previous 200s at Abilene and Leadville, or, having a massive blow up. And I don't think he's, intending to come to this race to finish at all costs, where he's got to do a spirit walk for 24 hours. So yeah, definitely buying on this one.
Yeah, I'm buying. He's got Zach Miller vibes to me in that his heart is out there and he is going for it. I mean, without getting too much into our next topic, like seeing what's happening with training, him saying that, that this race matters to him. He wants to win, like all of that sort of stuff to me. Yeah, I'm buying the podium or the DNF. I'm buying that. I don't see, it would be an absolute honor to get top 10 at Western States. I don't think he's there for 2 through 10, but certainly not 4 through 10. So I think if 4 is on the horizon, he's probably going to go so hard that he'll blow up. That's my guess. So I'm buying. I'm buying the podium or the DNF.
Yep, totally.
All right, good start. But here we go. So what about David Roach, buy, sell, the transparency in his training? So he's being very transparent with his training, which for me is amazing because I've always wondered what these guys and women are doing. Walmsley is famously, like I remember watching UTMB a few years ago, and it's like his Strava was quiet for 6 months or something like that. And then the day before, the day of UTMB, it was one that he got a DNF on. He dropped all of his Strava data for the last 6 months. It's like, oh my God, his volume has been huge. He's ready. He's going to win. And that makes sense from a competitive standpoint. So help me word this correctly, but are buy or sell the transparency in his training?
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously am buying it from a perspective of it being beneficial and essentially, the example that I'd love to see year over year. Maybe not the same athlete. This might be an added, training distraction, on him. So, maybe it's a new athlete every year that kind of does this, but as a fan of the sport, yeah, I'd love to see this, at every major race. And yeah, just taking the ownership to go out there and, partner with a hungry, young and up and coming filmmaker, so these YouTube, 30, 40 minute, mini docs are done by this guy, Cody, who, is relatively a new name, I think, and just, hitched his wagon to David, good on him. And yeah, I mean, the content's great, and it's giving, I think things for other podcasters to talk about the sport. I always hear, all of your other major podcasters, reference this, especially even the ones that are elite athletes themselves, and so, yeah, it's giving everybody something to talk about and have an opinion about with Western States, which is what we want. That's the E that we always try and champion for the sport.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So on the bigger level of like the democratization of the sport, like the breaking down of let's say the barriers, I don't know if barriers is the right word, but opening this sport up to more people, I think that transparency is really, really fascinating in terms of he's given away competitive advantage while he's at peak performance. It would be one thing for Walmsley to come out in 5 years and say, here's what I did, but to be doing it in real time, that transparency is really actually useful for someone like me who it's my goal to get a 24-hour 100-miler at some point. Like that's ambition. And I can use what he's doing to see what are these great elites doing? How hard are they actually pushing themselves? I mean, and this guy's pushing himself crazy hard. And so on that level, I'm buying it all day. As someone who I want that weekend to have success, because his success to me, again, has an element of feeling like democratization of the sport. And I'm having trouble wrapping my mind about it. Over the next however many months, 3 months, I probably will be able to articulate that better. So I will say on that level, I'm selling. Don't be so transparent about it because I want you to show up that day. And I want you to, I like the Walmsley approach of who knows what I've been up to lately. I'm here to compete and I'm going to win this thing. Like I'm here to win. So I'm torn. But for the betterment of the sport, the transparency, buying. For him winning that weekend, I wouldn't mind. I would sell that. I don't want that. I want him to show up and just crush.
Yeah, and like we've talked about, I mean, I think what David has done for himself is that everybody that tunes into the live cast is going to be interested in what David's doing, either to see him
Absolutely.
succeed or to watch him fail miserably. Whereas like maybe somebody like Hayden Hawks or Rod Farvard, like it's just going to be those who are interested in him winning or having a good result, and there's going to be a lot of
Yeah.
people that may be just indifferent or
Yeah.
cheering him on that day, but not at all interested previously leading up to it. And so yeah, David is clearly like, the biggest storyline and the name I think that's going to have the most fanfare in the live chat.
Yeah, I mean his lead up to it from the standpoint of entertainment, the E and ESPN, like man, we are going to be emotionally invested. Love him or hate him. If you hate him, you want to see him fail
Yeah.
because he's Babe Ruth calling his shot, like all that sort of the people who love to see that failure, put some people who are behind it. We're going to be so emotionally invested. I think he's putting on that level where I just said I would sell. I'm actually buy. He's putting on a clinic for how to build anticipation for the great American race that we're all so stoked on.
Yep. What do we got next?
Well, you alluded to it. Last David Roach topic, buy, sell. Is David Roach? So here it is. David Roach is the best storyline at Western States this year that we know of today. Buy or sell?
Yeah, I mean, I have to buy it still. There's nobody else, I think, coming in with a storyline that's more intriguing or that we have more access to. You have to kind of almost manufacture your own storyline, right? Like if you say Jim's got the greatest storyline, what is it? To Jim's fault, like he's not really putting any narrative out there himself that he's owning, so we have to project that on him, and so there's not going to just be a universal one for him. Yeah, exactly. I think the only person that could steal it at the last minute would be if Killian, gets a golden ticket at Chianti and then accepts it. I think that shakes it up because now, you've got somebody at Killian's prestige who hasn't ran this race in over a decade coming back. And so that's an interesting, but it doesn't have the depth, it's just something that's maybe, just a flash in a pan. And then you still want to tune back and see what David's doing. So yeah, I still got to buy it. Who knew in 2025 we'd be talking about David Roach this much at Western States?
Well, I think Chianti has the best coming up this weekend, has some of the best storylines in terms of you've got the last 3 years of worth of winners competing. So Western States isn't quite getting that. So in lieu of that, so we'll have Walmsley, but will we have Killian? And then I'm blanking on last year's winner's name. I really should know this at this moment. What's that?
Vincent.
Okay. And talk about democratization again. That's an asterisk some other time. Him winning was an element in my mind of a democratization of any given Sunday. Someone else could just disrupt this. So yeah, I mean, right now the thing I am as the field stands now, and as I understand it, I'd say just personally, I'm most excited because David Roach is talking a lot of noise, and I think that's the story. So I'm buying that. I'm buying that. That's the most interesting story. I think that's a fun thing to check in on over the course of the next few months. Is it remaining that? Could it change? It could, but for now, I'm with you. I'm buying that.
Lots of
All right, you ready?
man.
Next one.
Bitcoin Roach, man. That's what we're gonna have to call him now, man. He's hot.
Yeah. Totally. Okay. Portal. Portal is a new brand. There's been some anticipation around Portal, and if you look at their marketing, I'm just going to give high level because I've not necessarily been in what we have called the self-expression camp here, which I think you are championing that movement along with many others, but you are in the podcast realm really championing it. And I'm gonna first characterize self-expression movement, and you make sure that I got it right, and then we'll go into the buy-sell question around Portal. Yeah. What I observed from self-expression, this is from conversation with you, from a conversation with Mikey Kratzer, and that is you're actually looking at running as performative art, as an art form, and running then as if you were painting, as if you were drawing, as if you were sculpting, you are expressing yourself through that medium of creation. So the self-expression movement within running is to say running is how I'm telling the world who I am and what's inside me, and I'm running in such a way that communicates that. And then there's brands that have been coming alongside that and building their brand off of wanting to align themselves with that. So I'm still circling the plane, trying to nail it down. But how would you define it exactly before I ask the buy sell question?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're on it. I think for me, what I internalize it as is just uh, not having to necessarily wear a costume to go and run and be active and move. And essentially, so self-expression is finding ways to still express myself authentically as I do in how I engage with the world everywhere else outside of running. And so it's bringing that same, unique, creative, stylistic, clothing and appearance and presentation to running as I would, anything on a Saturday morning that I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, Portal has been, people have been aware of it for a while because the guys, John and Patrick, I believe maybe there's more, have been at notable brands prior to Rafa and Roa. So clearly they know what they're doing in terms of branding and targeting a market and appealing emotionally to their target audience. So the question is there room for Portal? I mean, we've got Satisfy out there who has done a great job of going after this market. They've been foundational within running. A lot of brands have been emerging, but something about how Portal came onto the scene with so much anticipation and fanfare. Either they've got a great publicist or they just have a great knack within it themselves. They've come out strong. And they went, in my opinion, straight to Satisfy's level. Like, hey, we're not just a new brand releasing a little thing here. We're coming in, we're going to break down the silos between running, hiking, and biking, and clothing that you can wear in all three. So then the question is, in that context, are you buying or selling Portal?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to buy it from the perspective of that it's got the technical, expertise. Like you said, I think the reason why, it had such a fanfare is because, you had Patrick and who was the other guy?
John Roberts and Patrick Stangby.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
so
I'm
sorry,
familiar with
Patrick.
Patrick. Yeah, he's a good
Yeah.
follow on Instagram.
Okay.
Really, really talented runner. So he's not just a designer and runner in spare time. I mean, he's in that upper echelons. Maybe just a peg down from the true elite status. But yeah, he's running some very top notch races, and so I mean, he's got a big following and a big profile within the self expression movement himself. And so the fact that he launched something, there was a lot of interest. I think it's different self expression. So it's a very like muted, monotone, colorway and palette. Very clean, crisp lines. So it's not going to have moth tech holes. It's not going to have faded or tie dye. It's going to be a very European self-expression, and so sure, I buy it. I think there's a market for it, and self-expression obviously is a wide net to cast. It doesn't just mean satisfy, and so there's going to be people that resonate with this and love it, I think.
Yeah, I think for me personally, as we've established, for those who've been following us a long time, I don't fancy myself an early adopter of anything. I'm usually in the second tier. And so in that early adopter realm, I just, there's a thing there, there's stuff that my wife will show me. She's like, do you like this? We're in Paris. And like, do you like this? I'm like, I don't. And then like 6 months later, it's like, I love that. Why do I love it now? Just because I'm, maybe I'm low IQ and I just need to see it out on everybody before I realize if it's good or not. So, I look at Portal and think, I don't think that that's for me. I'm selling only because I'm not in the target demo. So they say hiking, cycling, and running, breaking down the silos between those two. I mean, I can't tell you how much I hate hiking, even though that is 60 miles of my last 100-miler was hiking. That was purely practical. That was not anything I enjoyed. I don't need to break down those silos. So, I'm selling because I'm just not in the center of the demo. But the asterisk is that I'm not an early adopter on anything. And the other asterisk is that I want every entrepreneur who's taken a risk to succeed. So my selling purely is a way of saying, I'm just not the target demo for this right now, but I'm watching, I'm paying attention, and I want their success.
Yeah, I think definitely check it out because I think from a technical aspect, it's got, again, these are designers, you know what I mean? Like these gentlemen know how to cut fabric so it performs and moves well in the elements it's designed for. aesthetically,
Yeah.
it kind of reminds me of Path. It's very basic and
Oh,
clean,
good
but
point. Yeah.
not muted with just grays and blacks. And so, yeah, if you've
Yeah.
ever wanted to, introduce, some other muted but rich colorways, that's what they're offering. So, and the price point is
Yeah.
less than Satisfy, so it's not something that's shooting to be a $300 pair of shorts. So,
Mm.
yeah, I think it's
Huh.
finding a sweet spot, and we'll see how
Okay.
it continues to develop.
Yeah, and I have a friend Sam who's talking a lot about wanting to do more stuff where he's looking at these self-expression brands that could be a little bit more pricey and want to, I don't know, hold them accountable is kind of a strong word, but to say, hey, let's make sure that this stuff that looks awesome that you're marketing to us as runners is not only do we look great in it, but that it actually holds up. And I think, that's what I want to see from Portal. That's what I want to see from Path. That's what I want to see from Satisfy. Like, hey, we're dropping that money. We're runners. Let's make sure that not only do we look good, feel good, but it actually will hold up, for the long haul.
Yeah, man. Hey, while we're talking about clothing, real quick
Yeah.
tangent. I got to shout out this shirt that I'm wearing. It's this
Uh-huh.
company that's super new and niche. It's called Dusty Dash Trails, and
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it, but
Oh yeah.
essentially,
Nice.
what this design is inspired from is trench art from the Vietnam era, and so
Oh, dang.
soldiers would write
Oh
on
my
their
gosh.
helmets, and so the company is super creative.
Wow.
They include this old VHS movie box like you would get at Blockbuster, and so
So
they build
awesome.
a whole storyline around it. Yeah, it's incredible. Like it's just
Huh.
really well thought out, and they're
Okay.
finding inspiration from unique places, which is super cool about self-expression, right? Like the guy just saw
Yes.
this Vietnam era helmet and it looked super inspiring, designed a t-shirt around
Mm,
it, created a movie box, and yeah, it's
yeah.
pretty neat what they're doing.
Dang. Okay. Yeah. Speaking of Full Metal Jacket, man, that's one of
Yeah,
the
it's exactly the
craziest
vibes I
movies.
had on it. It was super cool.
That
So
as soon as I saw that, that made me think of Full Metal Jacket.
yeah,
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
yeah, for sure, dude.
Okay. Next, Michael Kratzer is running TSP solo. What do you make of that? Let's lay the foundation for TSP. I think maybe that's important. Here's what I see with TSP. It's that really it's this is actually a perfect. We just talked about it, self-expression. I feel like something about TSP, the guys that I've seen run it, who I really admire, TJ Bottom in Salt Lake City, who I really like. He was the first person I heard about it from, and he's very much in that movement of self-expression, like you just talked about. What is TSP? How do you characterize TSP?
Wow. Well, it started off as kind of just like this, like, bar type challenge. I mean, it almost has kind of like a Western States type story in the sense that it, was created just off of a bet, a dare, a curiosity, right? And so, yeah, I mean, this group just decided that they were going to try and bandit run from the Santa Monica Pier to the Las Vegas sign, which, I mean, that's pretty cool because you've got two,
Yeah,
iconic landmarks and you just
very
decided, let's
iconic.
just
Yeah,
tie them together. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a bandit race that the whole world knows about, which is crazy.
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and so, yeah, essentially that's what it is. You create your own, route. There's no necessarily rules about it. But yeah, you have no support. You've got a team event, and then you've also like a team relay, basically. So runners can run whatever amount, 3 miles, 5 miles, and then they tag their team and they just keep progressing towards the Vegas sign. And then you got solo endeavors where, yeah, I mean, it's just one person making the full, I think it's about 330-mile trek
Yeah,
from the pier to the sign.
yeah. Amazing. And so Mikey's done that solo before.
And the
He's
team, yeah.
doing it, and with the team,
Yeah.
and yeah, I have loved everything I've seen about it. They did one out of Salt Lake that starts at Ensign Peak in downtown Salt Lake City, and there was a TSP from
Right.
there to. It was like a take on anytime someone like there's cycling events or anything like that goes from Salt Lake to Vegas. It's always a play on like Mormon, Salt Lake, Saints to like sin.
Sinners. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like events called Saints to Sinners and all this sort of stuff where you're going from there. But I love it. I'm inspired by TSP in general. Mikey doing 350 miles is just crazy to me. And the buy sell aspect here is more just a moment to give some love to Mikey. Of course, I'm buying the hell out of that. I want to see that dude crush that.
Yeah, I'm definitely buying it. And yeah, I mean, I think, within this event, there's a lot of mystery to it. I don't
Yeah.
think there's any sort of, wide adoption. We're not embracing it and pulling it into the ultra running community for some reason.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, we do things like Big's Backyard, which are pretty contrived. I mean, a 4.16 mile loop on end, right? Why can't we, maybe get around TSP as an event as well that we
What a
celebrate
great point.
and look to for inspiration?
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying the unorthodox nature of these other events get adopted by Ultra. This one has not. This one feels like the bandits, even though it's a bandit race. I'm using it in a different term. This feels like the bandits. This feels like the Willie Nelsons and Johnny Cashes of the running world who've really gotten pulled into TSP and, with the road running element of it. But I think that's a great call.
Well,
Why has it not been pulled in?
I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it up front, right? Just pull the band-aid off. It has everything that we want about a race, except it doesn't have the things we don't want, which mainly I'm talking about the kind of douchey road running aspect that ultra and trail runners, I think, despise, right? I think separating the elites, right? Because the elites are super talented. They wear half tights,
Yeah.
they're gonna be similar to your road running scene, amateur and professional alike. Right? Like you got a guy chasing like a sub 5 hour marathon, he's gonna wear a half tight and a super fast singlet. And
Right.
I think ultra trail runners who are like looking at the 26 to 30 hour, they're not wearing half tight and sharps, fash, singlet. They're wearing trail running clothes. And so I
Yeah.
think that makes up a large portion of the 95. And so they look at first glance at TSP and they think, I want nothing to do with that. This looks too, modelish and, too clean. And, they can't see why this would be fascinating for them.
Yeah. I think maybe the first images I ever saw from TSP were probably Rourke Run Amok. And my dude TJ Bottom was probably the creative director behind it, or at least an inspiration, as he's worked with them for a long time. And it felt so cool. It was so ideal to me. I was like, God, I wish. Why didn't TJ ask me to do it? Clearly because I'm still wearing my Brooks hat when I run from 1999. So you're right. There is that element that it almost just feels like a fashion show at some point because these people look so cool. It's the coolest of the cool people.
Yeah, Satisfy had a team too. And they put out a good docu series or docu movie. Basically, it was like about an hour long. It's called Out on a Wire, I think, is what it's called. And it's incredible. I mean, that was one of the early pieces of content, right up there with like Billy Yang's stuff that got me, fired up and kind of opened the door for self-expression and seeing these other runners out there, moving in a way that looked beautiful and still rebellious.
Yeah. Okay, so just so I'm totally tracking, the pull the Band-Aid off statement that you just made.
Yeah.
Say it again as succinctly as possible.
I think it has everything that we need and want as trail runners, but it doesn't exclude the things that we don't want. And that's our problem. We get hung up on seeing things we don't want. I think.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because you don't have to worry about going to, maybe it's an intimidating thing, right? Like there is maybe some sort of like self-conscious aspect of looking at this and it's like, well, these are all teams put together by brands and, these people all have some type of aesthetic or look that's, intimidating possibly, or, not like
it's like a 350-mile catwalk.
Yeah, I mean, it truly is. Like brands sponsor these caravans out there and do incredible activation. They put together incredible content because the landscape is perfect, right? I mean, the story is already written. You just have to go and capture it now. So but that's why I'm like, this is my next buy or sell, right? Is TSP the most untapped event or race series that could provide professional lifestyle? Brands are throwing a ton of money behind support and I'm sure compensation, signing these athletes after they become well known off of the TSP event. And it's not just Las Vegas to Santa Monica now. You already mentioned Salt Lake to Vegas, and now it's a global series. They've taken the TSP, spirit and they've brought it globally now. So you could go through a whole 12-month year and do multiple TSPs and provide brand value. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Even when we talked before and you said, hey, let's make this a question for buy or sell, I was tracking with you, but now more than ever I'm getting it. And I think, is TSP is like this fantastic canvas. And if we talk about early adopters being 2.5% of the market, of the target market, early adopters. So TSP has been in this early adopter phase, much like we said about Satisfy in our first buy sell. Like you're an early adopter and you're graduating up. When does TSP graduate up into that next chunk of its target market, which is going to be 18% of that addressable market? You know, there's massive potential there, and for copycats, I'm sure there's got to be copycats of some sort that are doing this bandit start finish. Like you're only having to get permits for start and finish, and then everything else in between is, signing the waiver. You're on your own. No permits, even at the pier and at the finish line. Oh man! And did they have to pay TSP something?
I don't believe I'm ignorant to that. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't believe so, but. Maybe.
Well, I feel like to your point, it's a canvas. I'm buying it. I don't know how soon, but I'm buying. Well, maybe it's going to be a couple years, and so I need to buy now when it's really cheap, because as it moves up, and the next tier of people, like you say, are no longer intimidated by the 350-mile catwalk, and we want to jump into it. I got to say this, I guess, does it become Ragnar at that point?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's the slippery slope, right?
It is.
Yeah. And maybe that'll always protect itself, in a sense, because not Niles, I believe is the way you pronounce his name, but the founder and kind of the face of it. I mean, he's a gatekeeper in a sense, right? So you could potentially have problems with that, right? Like he gets to essentially, you've got to. It's kind of like he's Laz. So the way you find your way into, the speed project is also a bit mysterious, and you kind of have to know the right people, I think, to ask around and figure out how to get yourself set up as a solo runner or as a team event. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's right. That's a slippery slope. How do you that's really it's a discussion of brand management. Like, so this guy is protecting TSP. It's cool. It's this canvas. Can he scale it without it then looking like Ragnar? I think that's interesting. I think he can, because of Ragnar never felt like TSP does now. So Ragnar now, I don't know what it's like now, but Ragnar early felt like Ragnar scaled, because I was around early on that stuff. And so maybe TSP scaled you'll be able to preserve it. That's interesting. Right. So I'm buying.
All right, man. What do we got next?
Next is the nutrition. Okay. Is nutrition the next segment to be disrupted by self-expression? We are heavy on self-expression today. I'm glad I went with that definition earlier.
Right.
Is nutrition the next segment in ultra running to be disrupted by self-expression? Okay, so to qualify that, can you give an example of another segment that was disrupted by self-expression?
Yeah, and when we say disrupted, it was just like an alternative narrative selling a product other than its intended use, right? And so I think, a brand like Norda, a brand like Satisfy, these were brands that it was assumed the performance and specs were there. They informed you about what it was up front and then never mentioned it again. And so now you're buying based off of, this intangible aspect, which we're calling self-expression.
Yeah.
And so I'm buying that wholeheartedly. I mean, I'm all in on that. I think any segment right now that hasn't had a challenger brand or a challenger, come in and disrupt it with self-expression or basically anything other than the performance value is poised to be disrupted. And when I think about nutrition, everybody's just selling, their unique chemical blend of sugars, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of just all white noise, right? And then most people are probably like never second, precision fueling. People are gravitating to those just because that's what you're most familiar with seeing Hayden Hawks and the team use, or Jim Walmsley is never second. Like it's it's correlation causation of like, did these brands rise because they're truly the best, or did they rise because we see the best using them? And it's still all performance based. And so I think if a brand comes around and starts just telling incredible stories and, creating a culture around the brand, then it's going to be a disruptor.
Okay. Man, anyone who's trying to understand self-expression, even though we're having fun with buy sell, this is the episode to understand it. What you're talking. So one way I would define self-expression after that is to say, and why nutrition is poised for it. So I'm buying is nutrition heavily markets on features. Mm-hmm. It's so like you're saying, we have 65 grams of carbs and 160 calories in this thing, rather than selling the outcome. I feel like self-expression sells the outcome. So if you are buying Portal or Satisfy or Norda, you're not getting the features, you're getting the outcome of those features being great. So if Norda really sells this beautiful aesthetic and like this athleticism or whatever, however you want to define it, on the other side of it, you're getting that outcome. In order to get that outcome, you have to have Dyneema and you have to have the Vibram sole that they've created and the grip that they have. All those features are going to give you this outcome over here. So yes, I would say that if I look across the landscape, Precision, NAC, who's making a big investment in the industry right now, Tailwind, all of them are selling the product or selling the features. I don't see anyone selling the outcome. Maybe Martin has at least the most cohesive outcome-based branding I've seen, and maybe I'm forgetting someone else, but no one is selling the outcome like Satisfy sold the outcome, or like it feels like these other self-expression brands that we've mentioned.
Yeah, well, think about like with Max Jolliffe or Joyfie. I can't ever pronounce his name right. I listened to a podcast and I think I get it, and then I listen to another one and someone says it different. So Max, sorry. But when he was affiliated with Cadence, everybody I think was fascinated with what Cadence was, right? Like it was this this electrolyte drink that was in a can. It was white, when Versteeg at Cocodona had Flota. Yeah. Again, everybody Flota would have been everywhere in 2024 if it was widely available and distributed, right? And so nobody knew what Flota was. Nobody knew the benefits of it, but they all wanted it. You know what I mean? Just because it was...
Perfect example.
Exactly.
I wanted it. I had no idea what it was. Was it Coca-Cola? No clue.
Right. So I think the brand that's coming onto market now is Hyperlight Fuel.
Okay.
I think they have the right storytelling, they have the right, aesthetic with their logo, their packaging, the way that they want to disrupt the market with some different things. And so, I'll keep an eye out for them. Again, at the end of the day, it's got to work for you. And I think it's just assumed that if you're putting, your calories in your bottle, it works. And so what's going to make you decide as a guy who's finishing, again, in the 95% range, which one you want to buy? Well, it's going to be which one do you want to be associated with, And so if this brand adds that added value to you of like giving you the exact same thing that like Death March or, any of these other apparel brands give you, then you start building out your team of products, and you're a Speedland guy, you're a Death March guy, you're a Hyperlight guy, and these are your tribes you run with.
Yeah. Okay. Here's what I think makes that especially powerful for Hyperlight is because in an episode I did with Jesse Rich, which we're talking, nutrition, like nutrition for people who want to perform better. He gave a shout out to Hyperlight as well. And we're totally talking about the features with him. Like, hey, I want to run better. And he's saying, yeah, use Hyperlight. You're getting the calories, you're getting what you need from a liquid that's not overly sweet. It's not a liquid. So, going through features. So what's interesting is to say you're seeing it on the self-expression side, the selling of the outcome of who you can possibly be by aligning with this brand. And Jesse's over here saying this is good, like from a performance. So maybe they are poised, but to use your definition of disruption, maybe they are the one that's poised to take that self-expression vibe to another level.
Yeah, they've made it efficient, right? Because like Jesse probably talked about in this podcast that I don't think it's out yet. I haven't heard it, but they're combining the high carb and high sodium, movement, which creates efficiency. Like I talked about in the juggling podcast, where you don't have to have 3 bags of product out, 3 different scoops that you're putting into this soft flasks or shaker, right? Like, so, right. They're creating a quality product. They're solving for efficiency issues, and they're doing it all with a lens of self-expression. I mean, that's the trinity right there of being able to hit a market and disrupt it. It's like Kodiak cakes. Remember the pancake mix?
Oh yeah, Park City.
Yeah, so the pancake was not that was another segment that had any disruption. You had the same brands for like the last 80 years, and then Kodiak cakes come along and say, "Hey, high protein pancake batter that you don't have to do anything but just mix with water." Duh, and they're everywhere now. They've took over the whole segment. So I see similar things there.
Okay. Yeah, man, that's a cool correlation or a cool sort of like parallel to look at the Kodiak to call out hyperlight. So in the end, we're saying, yeah, we're buying some that's the segment that's poised to be disrupted.
Yeah.
And some could argue that there's some players who've played in that space, but none have dominated. Think Satisfy to apparel. There's nothing even close to that in nutrition. So brands, if you're listening, we just gave you some great advice. Okay.
If you're a challenger brand, let us know, man. Reach out, always happy to.
Yeah, we'd love to be a part of your story.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. Oh, well, this is a fun one. Yeah, it's a fun one. All right. Walmsley, how should I word it? Is Walmsley will get another UTMB. Are you going to buy that he will get another UTMB, or are you going to sell that he will get another UTMB?
Winning. He'll win another UTMB. Correct?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, my God, I put a lot of thought into this because I said it just like half-heartedly, like, oh, this is a half-cocked one that we can just, easily move on from. But I'm going to sell that one, if I'm being true to the investor, spirit of the buy-sell. And it's purely because I think he's 35. So I'm giving him like 5 years, which sounds like a long time, but that's only 5 cracks at UTMB again. And that's assuming every year he wants to go back to it. So if 1 or 2 of the years he doesn't, that's only going to cut into it. So I'm saying 5 quality chances. He's already like just 1 for 5 right now with his UTMB attempts, I think. Someone will correct me, but he's somewhere in that area. And
spirit is accurate.
Yeah, I mean, and the sport is becoming more competitive with each year. It's not getting less competitive or less, depth of field.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna actually sell that reluctantly. I think right now it's probably like a 60-40, type of betting odds that 60% says he doesn't and 40% says he does.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it hurts because I'm a fanboy, but I'm with you. You got something
on my desk, man. I got the autographed Walmsley video.
Listen, here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that me saying sell means that Jim and I may never be friends.
And, he loves it.
I don't see that happening anytime soon. But yeah, I'm going to sell, and here's why. There are, for every one Jim Walmsley that we know about who is obsessing over and committing themselves to winning that race, there are 3 dozen that we don't know. We learned last year that on any given UTMB main event, a French runner who knows these Alps really well, the French Alps really well, can sneak in. He's not a nobody, but he's also wasn't one of the ones we were watching. So in any given race, one of these great French mountain runners can sneak in and take it. And then you've got people like Tom Evans, who is, building his year around it, from all I can tell. You've got all of these other men who build their years around this race. And Jim is just one of those 3 dozen who are doing that. And to me, with age and with, the way that the sport is getting younger, and who's the younger, younger meaning 31, 32-year-old runners are going to take, he'd eat his lunch all day as 35, 36-year-old. So I'm selling that he'll ever get another one. And that makes me sad.
Yeah,
I'm selling it.
Well, we're not saying it's 100% certain. I think saying that
it's just we're hedging ourselves. Yeah, we're saving our money.
Exactly. I think I can certainly appreciate anybody who wants to say that they're going to buy that. You know what I mean? Okay. Like they're going to say, no, Jim's got, with Killian declining and possibly no longer interested in chasing UTMB, Jim's going to be the odds-on favorite in a year he shows up fit. And so, there's.
Do you think Zach? Okay, what about Zach? Buy sell.
Zach, well, I mean, same argument, probably even less, reason to buy, in the sense that, I think he's always going to be short of Jim. And so unless Jim decides to take a year off or he's injured in DNFs, like, I don't necessarily think Zach just showing up with his best fitness means it's his to win that day if he delivers. So, and who knows, maybe after Zach got second place and emptied the tank, like maybe I don't know if his fire still burns the same as it did during the years when he was chasing it with Billy. So who knows? Maybe it does. We're just pontificating here. But, the biggest fear is like, what if David Roche decides he wants to win UTMB? Then everybody's going to be fucked.
Way to bring it full circle. I will say, yes, the next American man to win UTMB will be David Roach or Caleb Olson.
And he'll probably win it with those ankle weights on. So, I mean, everybody's just going to be screwed at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be his training run. Man, okay, so it's important to note that I started by saying David Roach, I'm not in his target demo for his podcast. So I'm not just a crazy fanboy.
No.
I just need to say that because otherwise I am.
Yeah, he's the savior we never wanted, and people are trying to stone him to death right now. So you find the through line there.
I got his back.
Yeah,
not that he needs it. All right, man. This was a blast. This was action packed. I think we got them all. Let's do this again soon. Okay.
You bet, buddy. Take care, man.
See you.